Under King Ahab, the northern kingdom of Israel entered a period of intense spiritual transition. By marrying Jezebel, the daughter of the king of Sidon, Ahab integrated the worship of foreign deities directly into the heart of the nation. This chart of the heavens was dominated by Baal. To the average citizen, Baal was the deity responsible for the rain, the storms, and the agricultural fertility that kept the economy alive. Elijah arrives as a direct counter-narrative. His name, which means Yahweh is my God, functions as a public declaration against this established religious order. God challenges Baal's authority by ordering a total cessation of rain and dew. The resulting intense drought leaves the soil cracking and barren, turning the land into a graveyard for crops. This wasn't a random environmental disaster. It was a theological strike. By stripping away the rain, God forced a society dependent on Baal to witness the idol's total silence when their survival was most at risk. Immediately after his public declaration, Elijah is commanded to disappear. God directs him to the brook Kerith, a place of total hiddenness. In this isolation, the prophet depends on an unlikely logistics chain. Every morning and evening, ravens, birds categorized as unclean in his own culture, arrive with meat and bread for his survival. But as the drought intensifies across the region, the brook at Kerith eventually dries up. The last natural resource in Elijah's environment is gone. This stage of the journey strips away natural support. Elijah is being trained to move past reliance on his surroundings and into a state of absolute, moment-by-moment dependence on divine instruction. God's next directive sends Elijah to Zarephath. This map shows his path crossing the border into Sidon, Gentile territory, and the geographic epicenter of the very Baal worship he was fighting. He meets a widow who is gathering sticks for what she describes as her final meal. She has just enough flour and oil to feed herself and her son one last time before they starve. Elijah makes a demand that defies human logic. He asks her to use that final bit of flour to bake a cake for him first, before taking care of her own child. The widow chooses to act on the prophet's word despite the scarcity. She prioritizes the divine request over the instinct for self-preservation. This obedience triggers a continuous physical miracle. As the famine continues outside, the jars in her home never run dry, providing a steady supply of flour and oil for the entire household. By selecting a Gentile widow for this miracle, God shows that his grace moves beyond national boundaries. The event also demonstrates that continuous divine provision follows deeply risky, illogical obedience. Even with a reliable food supply, tragedy strikes. The widow's son falls ill and dies, bringing the reality of the national drought into the very heart of the home. The widow confronts Elijah with the weight of her grief. She has obeyed God and hosted his prophet, yet she is still left holding a lifeless child. Elijah carries the boy to an upper room. Stretching himself over the body 3 times, he calls out to God, asking for the boy's life to return. Faith is the resilient posture maintained while standing in the middle of an insurmountable crisis. It is a commitment to the Word of God, even when physical reality suggests the story has already ended. The prayer is answered. The boy's breath returns, resulting in the first recorded instance of resurrection in the biblical text. As she holds her living son, the widow's perspective shifts from desperation to certainty. She declares that Elijah is a man of God and that his word is truth. The 3 crucibles, isolation, scarcity, and death, were not random hardships. They were the specific training grounds required to build a prophet capable of standing against a king. This ancient drought mirrors our modern experiences of spiritual or emotional dryness. The widow's willingness to surrender her last meal reminds us that the most profound shifts in our lives often begin with a small act of trust. By overcoming the grave in Zarephath, God demonstrated a sovereignty that extends beyond rain and bread to the very fabric of life. This first victory over death serves as the essential blueprint for a greater prophet to come, Jesus Christ, who would eventually turn this localized miracle into a universal promise of resurrection.